Oh man, I've got to stop recording these at like 4 in the morning. It's just not. I look like a crazy person. Hello everyone and welcome back to another Ruby on Rails tutorial video. This is week 1, part 2 of my 20 in 20 challenge. This is going to be the video where we create the post for the blog, so that's going to cover the images like the thumbnail and the banner, as well as the WYSIWYG editor, which is going to be action text for the body of the post. We're also going to cover pagination, so like making sure there's only 10 posts per page, and if there's more posts, then you can like click over to page 2. And finally, I throw in the ability to create slugs for the post, which is the thing that changes it from like your URL being /post/1 to /post/ the title of your post. So like if you create a blog post that's, titled Hello World, you can go to like your URL /post/Hello World, and it's better for SEO ranking to have like words in the description like that or in the URL, but it's also just easier to link it to people because you can just say, hey, go check out like the new blog post. It's titled this, and someone will be able to find it. But yeah, let's go ahead and let's jump into some code. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's get started with setting up the posts. The first thing we're going to do is start by creating the actual post scaffold. So for this, we're going to type Rails G scaffold. We're going to call it a post, and each post is going to have a couple of things. We're giving them each a title, and by default, it's of type string, but you don't actually need to type that because Rails will automatically give it string if you don't specify. We also want to give them a views so we can track how many people have seen each post. And for this, we're going to type views : integer. And then finally, we're going to give it a reference to the user that created the post. And we do that by typing user : references. So when we run this scaffold generator, it's going to create a bunch of stuff. We have to go delete something, and we also have to change something in the DB folder. So the thing we're going to delete is an app assets style sheets, assuming my Rails wants to work. I might. Hey everyone, this is Dean from 2 days in the future, well, I guess technically the past, but I'm editing this video right now, and I just wanted to say that if you're in the same boat with Rails running super slow, I just uploaded a 2-part video series about installing Rails on the new subsystem for Linux, and it is much faster now, so future videos won't have these weird, awkward waits for things to complete. Back to the video. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's get started by creating our posts. To do this, we're going to run the Rails G scaffold command, and we're going to call this a post. We're going to give each post a title of type string, but by default, Rails will automatically assign them a type of string, so you don't have to type :string for this. We'll also give each post a views of type integer, and a user : references, which is how we're going to associate which user created which post. Now we're also giving them the thumbnail image and the banner image, and we're obviously giving them a body of type text. But for the banner image and the thumbnail image, we're using active storage, and you don't need to generate a migration for those. And for the body, we're using action text, so you don't need to generate a migration for that either. So for now, these are fine. We'll go ahead and we'll run this scaffold generator, and it'll generate a bunch of stuff for us. One of the things it's going to generate is this scaffolds.scss file. And this is just one of the worst files in existence. I'm going to come back to this in a minute because we have to change something in the database real quick. For this, we're going to go to our DB folder, our migrate, and the last migration we created, because we want to change this t.integer : views to be default 0, which is just setting the views to 0 by default. Once that's done, we can run the Rails db : migrate command. And once the migration has been run, we should be okay to run a Rails s command so that I can show you why this scaffolds generator is the bane of my existence. Now there are ways around this, but I never do them when I start my projects for some reason. So as you can see here, when you hover over some links in the nav bar, they are turning black, and that's because of the scaffolds.scss file. If we delete this file, and refresh the page, you'll notice the style changes and that the links are no longer ugly. Okay, so now that we've done that, the next thing we have to do, I believe, is change the root of the application to be the posts index page. And to do that, we can come into config and routes.rb. Then we have resources posts, and we also have our root pages about. Let's change this from pages about to posts index. Next, we can run our Rails S command, and we can check to make sure that worked. I'm actually going to just move the console down here like that, and move this window up here so that we have a bit more room to work with. So here you can see we're on the post page at the home page, and when we navigate between the about and the home pages, it's changing because we set up those links last time in the nav bar. Now, let's go ahead and let's start adding in all of the images and the rich text. To do that, we're going to go into app models post.rb. And we can see it already belongs to a user, but it's also going to has _1_ attached :thumbnail. And you can name this whatever you want to. You just change this thumbnail to like image or pic or pin or whatever. But I'm calling this one a thumbnail. And then I'm also going to give it a has one attached banner. Now I could say it has many attached and just create an array of images, but because it's only 2, I think this is clearer and it will allow better organization down the line. Now the other thing we want is a has _rich _text, and we're going to give this a body. And this is the new action text from Rails 6. And all this will do is change it from basically a default block of text to something that the tricks editor can use. And I'm also going to comment this and say this is for active storage from Rails 5. Just in case anyone ends up looking at this, they know what this stuff is from. Now, we'll also be doing some validations on this body. And for this, we can type validates :title. And we'll validate the length to be a minimum of, let's say, 5. It also validates the body to be a length minimum of, I don't know, 25 maybe. And then we'll just clean this up a bit because I don't have a code formatter for my VS Code. And the last thing we're going to do while we're in here is create a method to resize these images. You could do this with CSS, but I prefer to do it in here with image variants. We're just going to call this optimized _image. We're going to give it an image as an argument, an X, and a Y. Oops. And all we're going to do for this is say return image.variant. Then we're going to say resize _to _fill : and then we're going to open up the square brackets, and we're going to pass in X, Y. And then outside of this, we're going to say dot processed. And we're going to come back to this in a little bit, but for now, I just want to already create this so that we can sort of follow the logical flow when we do this. The next thing we're going to do is go into app controllers, the post controller, and we need to change a couple things in here. The first thing we'd like to do is perform a validation to make sure that the user is logged in before they do certain things. So for this, we'll say before action, authenticate _user, accept. And the only time we don't want to make sure that the user's logged in is if they're looking at the index page or if they're looking at the show page. So if they're looking at all the posts on like the home page, they don't need to be logged in for that. And if they're looking at a specific post, we also don't want them to be logged in for that. Like, it's fine, you know, that's how you get traffic to your website. The other thing we would like to do is make sure that if a user is trying to go to the new post page, that they are an admin. because we set it up so that only admins can create new posts. And the way we can do this is if we go into controllers, application controller, we can create a helper method, which will make sure that if the user is not an admin, they'll just be sent back to like the home page basically. So we'll start off by saying helper underscore method, and we'll say is underscore admin and a exclamation mark. And we're just doing that to be consistent with the devise authenticate user exclamation. And then down here, we'll say private. And below that, we'll say def is underscore admin end. And for this, what we want to do is if the current user and the current underscore user dot admin. So if the user's logged in, which is the first thing we have to check, otherwise this would be nil and this would throw an error. So if the user's logged in and the user dot admin is equal to true, then do nothing. Otherwise, redirect to the root underscore path. And then we'll say end. And now we can use this is admin inside of this post controller. So we'll say before underscore action is admin except index and show. And of course, we could just use this instead of authenticate user because we are checking to make sure the user's logged in. But let's keep both here just to be clear, and maybe down the line we decide to change it so that you can be logged in for some of these things, but you have to be an admin for other things. Okay, so now that we have that, the next thing we want to do is come down to our show page, and we need to create the view counter. And for this week, there's a couple ways you can do it. The way we're going to do it this time is we're just going to say views is equal to @post.views plus 1. And then @post.update, and we'll set the views to be this new views variable. Now, if you've watched my other tutorials, a couple other ways I've done this is I've said @post.views equals @post.views plus 1 @post.save. You could also do something like @post.update views @post.views plus 1. I'm sure that would also work. It's really just up to you. Sometimes I do it one way, sometimes I do it another. Usually when I'm teaching, I try to be as clear about what's happening as possible so that it's easier to digest. I'm not really here looking for the most efficient code. I'm looking for the most educational code, I guess. So our new method is fine. Our edit is fine, but our create needs to change because now we're saying this post also has a user ID associated with it. And for this, all we have to do is say @post.user is equal to the current underscore user. And since we're authenticating before the user gets here, we know they'll be logged in, so this will work every time. If it doesn't, we have far bigger problems than this not working. Once this is done, we're done in the create. We can pass over the update and the destroy and the set post, but down here in the post params, we need to change things a little bit. So the first thing we need to change is we don't need this user ID, because we're just grabbing the current user. But what we do need, actually I don't think we need the views. What we do need is the body, the thumbnail, and the banner. So the body will be passed by the rich text body. The banner and the thumbnail will be passed by the files that we're creating with the action text. So we can save this, and then we can come down to the post form, which is in our views, posts, form.html.erb file. And here we're using a simple form, and we have some inputs and this association. We don't need this association. We don't need these views. What we do need is a f.input body, f.input thumbnail, and a f.input banner. Once that's done, we should be good to come in here and create a new post. So if we hit new post, we'll get redirected because we're signed into the non-admin account. So let me just sign out, sign in to dean@example.com, which is an admin account. And now we should at least be able to go to the form page and maybe get an error. So here we're getting an error because we're using simple form. And Simple Form, as of this recording, as far as I know, has not pushed an update to handle action text yet. So I really don't know a way around this with the current setup where you could reasonably make Simple Form work. I've tried to create an extra folder, called it inputs. I created the code for this and it still wasn't working. So instead, we're just going to move to a default form. We're going to use the form_width, which is sort of a newer form. I think this is from Rails 5. And we'll say the model::post. So really, there's not a lot that's going to change here between this form and the simple form. We need to give the titles or the fields a label, and we need to change them from inputs to what they actually are, and we need to give them the classes. So the first thing we'll do is we'll say we need a f.label for the thumbnail. Thumbnail. And we'll give this a class of form-control. And then I'll use Alt and the arrow keys to move this down to the thumbnail. Next, the banner also needs a class form_control. So we'll just copy this, we'll paste it down here to banner, and we'll change this to banner. So that gives us the two labels. Now we need to change this to a file_field for the thumbnail. And we need to change this banner to a file_field. We also should change this title from a f.input to a f.text_field. And then we'll say comma, class, open quotes, form-control, string. And now for the body, we really don't want to leave the body in here because the formatting will mess it up. I'll throw it at the bottom for now just so we can take a look at what happens. We need to change this to a rich_text_area. And if we save this, this should, now our errors are throwing errors. So let's get rid of these two as well. Refresh the page. And now we'll start getting errors that are closer to what we're looking for. So this first one is telling us that we can't find the table for action text rich text. And the reason for this is we have to actually run, okay, apparently my terminal just crashed. The reason for this is we have to run the action text installer. And we can do this by typing Rails action_text:install. And this should install the action text into the application and create a migration for us. I think we do also need to install the active storage. And this will run yarn and do a whole bunch of yarn stuff. So I will see you guys as soon as yarn is done installing. Okay, so it looks like the action text does the active storage install for you. So that's nice. You learn something new every day, I guess. So the next thing we need to do is actually if we run Rails db::migrate and then we'll start the server, we should get a different type of error soon, hopefully. Oops. So let's run Rails S. That's sort of the part they don't tell you about when you first start programming, is that you're basically hunting for errors once you know what you're doing. Every time you run into a familiar error, it's a sweet victory. Okay, so now we have our form working mostly. So we can say my first post, grab a couple images here. We'll go over to backgrounds and we'll grab some images. We'll grab, I don't know, this one. And maybe we'll grab this one. And then for our text here, let's grab some more lorem ipsum. Copy this, paste it in here. Hit submit. And now the post is submitted. Now, of course, you can't see anything here. And we're going to start running into more and more issues. But for now, at least we know that these things exist in the database. So that's a small victory. And you kind of have to take those where you can get them. So the next thing we're going to do is come over to, I believe, the show page. And we're going to sort of clean this up. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just get rid of everything, which is usually how we start these things. We're going to start by saying we're going to create a div. We're going to give it a style equal to a width of 100% and a height of 300 pixels. Oops. And then we're also going to say overflow -y is set to hidden. We'll close off this div. Then inside of here, we'll use some Ruby code to create an image underscore tag. We'll say @post.banner, comma, style, width 100%. And then we'll close off this Ruby code. So now if we refresh the page, our image is up top, which is good. That's our banner. And now we can move on to creating the actual contents of the blog post. So for this, we'll create another div. We'll give it a class equal to container. And let's give it a style with a margin -top of 2em, which is just going to push it down a little bit so it's not hugging the banner image. Once we're inside, we'll create a div with a class of row. Close off that div. Then we'll create another div with a class equal to Jumbotron. And if you're wondering how I know to do these things, it's mostly just from practice that you don't see on camera. I honestly couldn't just throw this together in the way that I do. It comes from quite a bit of practice. Okay, now let's throw in an h1, give it a class equal to display-4. And we'll close this. And then inside of this h1, let's create a link to the @post.title, and then the root underscore path. And all we're doing here is we're basically creating a way to go back and forth between the home page and the show page. And actually, let's change this Jumbotron to have a style equal to with auto. Okay, maybe not auto, maybe 100%. There we go. So that should occupy 100% of the parent element. Again, CSS isn't really my thing, and honestly, you should be using classes and moving this into your application.css file, but this is the rough version of the project, so to speak. So for now, we're allowed to do some hacky things like this. The next thing we're going to do is move down below the h1 and create a p with a class equal to lead or lead. I'm assuming it's the lead, but who knows. Now we're going to create a couple snippets of Ruby code because we want to create that post updated at block of text followed by which user created it, followed by the number of views thing. So the first thing we want to do is grab the @post.updated@ chunk, and then we'll say by @post.user.username. Oops, @post.user.username. And then let's throw up a pipe, and then we'll say pluralize @post.views, view. And all this pluralize does is it takes this word, whatever this word is, it could be comment, it could be view, it could be dog, and then it takes whatever this integer is, so in this case it's the post view count, and if it's 0, like in this case it would be 0 views, it will pluralize it. If it's 1, it'll say 1 view. If it's 2 or more, it'll then pluralize it again. So it's just a way to be grammatically correct without a convoluted if statement that you have to create yourself. But let's save this, refresh the page, and figure out what this error is. So it's saying oh, I had double users. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. Okay, so now we're saying the post was updated on this weird UTC time by Dean, and it has 8 views. We have to change how this is formatted, and the way to do that is to use .strf time. Wow, I cannot think right now. Then again, it is 3 a.m. And this comes with some formatting options that you can actually find on Google if you just type strf time format. And you have a couple of options here, but there is one that I like to use, which I think is strftime.net. And all you want to do in here is you can click through like month, hours, and it'll format it up here so you can sort of see what you're working with. So let's say you wanted hour and minute. You could do %L colon %M, and that'll give you the hour minute. Now for me, I already know what I want, but you can use this to play around with if you like something different. There's also some of these pages have, oops, not that one. I think it's this one. Is it dev hints? Some have pre-formatted blocks. Like this is the one, pretty much what I'm going to use here. So we're going to say %A, comma, %B, %E, comma, %Y. Oops, %Y. And this will just format it in a easier to read way. And it looks like I have an error here. STRF time. Wow, this is just hard to watch, isn't it? Okay, so now we have our post being formatted properly. We have the date that it was posted at, the published user author guy, and the number of views. Next thing we want to do, below this p tag, we'll create a HR, which is a horizontal row. Give it a class equal to my-4. And then we'll just slash it out to end it. Then we'll say div class equal to post underscore body. Close out this div. And then we'll say, let's just render out the @post.body. And when we do that, we have the post body beautifully displayed here. And it should be good even if we create something with some rich text. As you can see here, there's the spaces are preserved and stuff like that. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to do, if we come back to the home page, I believe, is clean up the way that the home page looks here. So in the same way that we have this, the code for the show page here, we can come to our posts index page. And let's get rid of all of this, and let's paste in our show page. When we try to run this, of course, we're going to get errors because we have different variables set up here. So the first thing that we could do is say the entire list of posts is inside of this container. Sure, we'll give them a padding of the 2 up top so it looks pushed down a little bit. Now the row is fine. We have a Jumbotron. Let's maybe try to encapsulate all of this with a @post.each do post, @posts.each do posts. And then let's come down here and close this off with a %end. Now when we refresh, we'll see that all of the things are undefined, and the reason is the variable that we're using here is post, but all of these are @post, and that's an easy enough fix. So let's just get rid of all of these @s, and then come through here where we have the @post.user and the post views. Get rid of all of that, and now you can see that the home page looks oddly similar to the show page. Now this is fine, but I think we could probably do better. So let's go ahead and let's restyle this to use some Bootstrap cards. So if we come over to the Bootstrap page and we look at the cards and we come down to card images, you can see how these kind of resemble the initial design where there's the image inside of the card with a description below it, which was the body. And I think if you come down here, you can see bigger examples, and these are kind of what I used for mine. So let's get rid of this, and let's just create the whole thing from scratch. This gives it kind of a bit of a different feel when you're on the home page versus the actual page where you read the posts. But for now, let's start with a div class equal to container. Let's do a some Ruby code for @post.each do post, and then we'll end it. Next, let's create a div with a class equal to row, and we'll sort of use this so that each blog post is in its own row. Now inside here, we want to create a div with a class equal to card and MB-3. Inside of this div, we want to create a IMG tag. And we're just going to close it like this and hit enter a couple times. So the first thing inside of this IMG tag that we want is a class, and we'll say class card hyphen IMG hyphen top. The next thing we want is a SRC, and we'll set this equal to some Ruby code. And in here, what we need to do is say URL underscore 4. And now this is where our post.rb method is going to come in, because we want to sort of resize this image to be what the card expects, rather than creating the whole image, which is just unnecessary performance loss. Like, just because you're resizing it doesn't mean that the page is not loading as much, and we don't want to put the page under unnecessary stress. So what we can do for this is say post.optimized underscore image, which is what we called it when we created it in post.rb. I could have called this, I don't know, like donkey banner, and then in the index page I would just be saying post.donkeybanner instead. But I feel like that wouldn't be as descriptive of what I'm doing here as optimized image, so I opted for this instead. We can open up some parentheses and say post.thumbnail, comma, and we're using the thumbnail because it's the thumbnail image when you create a new post that we're using here. And we're not trying to confuse the user. I don't know why this new post link isn't working now. Oh, because it's stubbed out, isn't it? /post/new. There we go. Okay. So we do need to fix that still. If we come in here, we're using the thumbnail because it's what the user specifically uploaded for the thumbnail. And I believe the size that I settled on was 586 by 180. And again, this is just because in the post.rb, we created the method to take in the X and the Y. So the 586 is the X and the 180 or whatever is the Y. So that takes care of that. And the last thing we'll do is we'll set the alt to be equal to the card, or the, I guess, like blog post image card or something. And then this is already closing this tag, so this is good. If we save this and go back to the home page, we should start running into an error here because this is at posts and not at post. This is the error I was looking for. So here, I actually had to uninstall ImageMagick to make sure I would run into this error so I could show you guys. We can't use this because we don't have one of the gems installed, and we also don't have ImageMagick installed. So if I come down to my gem file, this right here, this active storage variant gem, we need to actually uncomment this. So we'll uncomment it, save it, kill the server, run a bundle command. This will install this image processing gem, and then we can run Rails S again. And if we refresh the page, I'm hoping we'll run into another error, but it looks like we don't. The other thing that you could run into, and that you should run into at some point if you're using active storage, and that you can just sort of get ahead of right now, is you need to sudo apt get install ImageMagick, spelt with a K, so MAGICK. This will allow you to do some more manipulations of the images, and when you start working more and more with active storage, this is just something that's going to become a necessity almost, unless you're using, I don't know, a different tool suite to do it. But it's something that I wanted to show you guys. I thought this would be a good way to cover it. So now we've covered it. We can close the gem file and we can move on. So the next thing we want to do after we have this image, and we're still in this card, I believe, is create a div with a class equal to card-body. And then we'll close this. And then inside of this card body, we'll set an h5. We'll give it a class equal to card-title. And inside of this, we'll say link underscore to post.title post, which is just giving the link the text of the post title, and then it's linking to the post itself. And then we can close off this H5. And we'll tab this over. Once we're done with the title, we can then create a P with a class equal to card-text. We can close this off, and then we can say post.body. And now, normally what you can do is say post.body.truncate underscore words 25, close off the Ruby code, and you'll cut this off so that the post is only, or that the thing is only showing you 25 words of the post body. But because we're using rich text here, and specifically action text, this won't work. The easy way to work around this is to go post.body.to underscore plain underscore text. And we'll just change this up to 50 because I already know that's the number I want to go with. And that will format it like so. Now that we have the body set up, the last thing that we could do here is create another p tag with a class equal to card-text. And then inside of this p tag, what we can do is say small with a class equal to text-muted. And inside of this, we'll say %equals post.updated underscore at.strf time, because I'm spelling it right this time, and then we'll just say %a, comma, %b, %e, comma, %y, quotes, parentheses, and then after that we'll write by, and then we'll open up some more Ruby code, and then we'll just say post.user.username, pipe it to pluralize post.views, comma, quote, view. And then we'll also have the comments at the end here, but we don't have the comments right now. So for now, we'll just say 0 comments. And once that's done, if I save this, well, I guess we don't have any more posts to show you, so I'll just close it off right here. If you forgot this small tag here, every time you go through here, it would just keep compounding the small, and your posts would start to get smaller and smaller, which is sort of what happens if you're not careful with your HTML. So it's just something to watch out for here. If that is a bug you run into, it might be because you forgot to close one of your tags. And I think once this is done, we can save this and refresh and hopefully not run into an error, he says, as he starts to run into errors. Oh, whoops, this is it right here. We forgot to close out the Ruby code, and instead of just doing the text 0 comments, we had that. Okay. Let's put the bar there so it looks a little bit neater, and that is our index page completed. Okay, so now that we have the index page completed, we have the show page. We can go back and forth between them. It looks a little bit more like a blog. We can do a couple of things. The first thing we can do is seed the blog posts into the database. So let's come over to our DB folder and seeds, and below the user, let's just create a couple dummy posts. We'll create 25, and we'll do this by saying 25.times do I, and then we'll say end. We'll create a post by doing post equals post.new. And now what we want to do is come down to our gem file and add in the faker gem. So let's kill the server, run bundle install, and come back to the seeds. And what the faker gem does, if you come over to the faker gem GitHub repo, is it allows you to create a whole bunch of dummy text that's a bit more random and seems more organic than just the same title and body every single time. And if you click on any of these, like the lorem one, for example, you can see that there's commands that allow you to generate, a set number of words or a set number of characters, sentences, paragraphs, questions. And we're going to use some of this to create a more natural looking application here, rather than just typing the same thing 25 times and having 25 identical posts. So let's start by saying post.title is equal to lorem with a capital L dot sentence. We'll give this a word underscore count equal to 3. And we'll say random underscore words underscore 2 underscore add colon 7. Then we'll do the post.body, which we can also use the faker gem for, even though it was rich text. And for this, we'll say lorem.paragraph underscore by underscore chars. And we'll just say number is 1500. Next, we'll say the post.user is equal to the user.first, which is just this account we've created up here, so we can guarantee it already exists. Then we'll say post.thumbnail, and this is where we sort of run into a problem, because how do we seed the images? I guess we could throw the images into like the public folder. That is how we could do it, but instead we're going to do it randomly. And the way you do this is with post.thumbnail.attach, which allows you to attach an image, obviously. And then we say IO colon, we'll say open. And in here, we can use the lovely lorem picture service, pixum.photos, I think. And if you scroll down, you can see how it works. So it's pixum.photos slash, and then your X and your Y. So if we want 1920 by 1080 pictures, for example, we just say https://pixum.photos/1920/1080. Now we do also have to give this a file name. So we'll say comma file name. And in here, we'll throw in the iterator underscore thumbnail.jpg, because why not? And now let's copy this whole line, paste it down here, and we'll just change this post.thumbnail to post.banner. We can scroll over here, and instead of saying underscore thumbnail, we'll say underscore banner. Next, we'll say the post.views is equal to the faker : number.between, and let's say it's from 1 to 5,000. Just give ourselves a nice big number to work with. And then we'll say post.save. And once we run all this, what we can do is say Rails db : drop and Rails db : migrate and Rails db : seed. And this should seed the database with all of our new information. Okay, now that that's done, let's run the Rails S command to start the server, and let's hope that we didn't blow anything up. So let's refresh the home page, and hopefully, well, we can see everything running here in the console. We should now see 25 new posts on the front page, all with random titles and descriptions and view counts and images, and we can click on any of these and you'll see the banner changes and it has random text in here. So that's great, but 25 images on a page, like you can see, it's not exactly the fastest thing in the world. What could we do to improve this? Well, if we come down to our gem file, and if you'll recall from about 2 years ago, I created a video on the will paginate gem, and that's exactly what we're going to use here. So we'll say gem will underscore paginate. We'll save this, kill the server, and run the bundle command. We can then come up to our post.rb, and actually let's close some of these windows because we have a lot of noise up here. Let's come up to our post.rb and our models folder. And below all of this, let's just say self.per_page equals 10. We can then close this and come to the posts controller. And then in the index, instead of post.all, we want to do post.all.order created _at, and then all caps DESC, which is going to reverse the order. Right now, the first post, if the server's down. But if I were to click on this, and actually in the bottom right here, you can see it says /post/1 and then /post/2. We want it to be /post/2524, so you see the newest post first, and that's what this is doing. So then after the created at DESC, we want to say .paginate, page colon params, open up the square brackets, and then colon page. That will take care of the pagination, but now I'd like to actually style this as well. And to do this, we can come into App, Assets, Style Sheets, create a new file, and let's call this pagination.css. If we come over to Google, we can search for the Will Paginate Gem GitHub page. And if you find the GitHub page for this, which can be a bit of a challenge sometimes, and you scroll down, you should be able to see a link that shows you how to create prettier pagination links. So if you click on that, we're going to use this one right here for the dig style extra content. So if we come up to the CSS, it'll give you a link to a blank page with all of the CSS. So you can just grab that and paste it in here. We're going to get rid of the flicker because we're not using flicker. We're going to get rid of the Apple pagination, and we're just going to stick with the dig. So we'll save this, and my code formatter apparently works for CSS in here, so that's great. But the other thing we need is this little code that actually renders it. And we're going to put this in our post index page. So if we come over to our posts, index.html.erb, and we scroll over a little bit, we want to put this basically above all of our posts, but inside of the container so that it's, aligned right around here. So let's do that. We're going to start with a div class equal to row, close it, which is just going to make sure that it has its own row that it occupies. Then we'll say div class equals dig with 2 G's underscore pagination. And then inside of this, we'll say will underscore paginate at posts, comma, colon container, arrow it to false. And if we save this and refresh the page, but I forgot to start the server again, which is just a running theme of this series at this point. I might as well make that my motto and put it on a t-shirt. If we do that, you can then see that we have the next button appearing right here. So the final thing I'd like to cover here, after doing the pagination, is something that I'm throwing in sort of in the middle of this video, because it's a small change, but it's a nice change. So in the initial project, when you clicked on a page, it just said /post/25. Here we're going to change things a little bit. We're going to use slugs and friendly ID. So if we come down to our gem file, we'll say gem friendly underscore ID, save that, kill the server, and run a bundle command. We then want to run Rails g friendly underscore ID. We then want to run Rails db colon migrate, and go over to our post.rb file. In our post.rb file, we want to extend friendly ID, which I guess we can do below this. So we'll say extend friendly ID. And below that, we'll say friendly underscore ID, title, use colon slugged. So if we did all of that correctly, we should then be able to say Rails g migration add underscore slug underscore to underscore post, and then we'll say slug colon string colon unique. And then we can run a Rails db colon migrate command again. And then we can run Rails C, because now we need to make sure that all of these posts have their slugs regenerated. And for this, we can just do P post dot find underscore each parentheses ampersand colon save. And if we run that, it should give them all a slug. We can hit Control D to exit out of the Rails C, hit Control L to clear the console, and then Rails S to start the server again. And now hopefully this works. I've just completely done this blindly, so I have no idea what will happen here. But if we come back to the home page And if we hover over one of these links, it looks like it's actually working. So if we click on it, it'll tell us that the post with the ID equal to this could not be found. And the reason why it's telling us that the post with this ID could not be found, if we come up to the post controller and down to the set post, I believe, this needs to be post.friendly.find, I think. So if we do .friendly.find and save this, it's now able to find the post. But if you look at the URL, it's actually converting the title into the URL here. So let's say you're on Google, your Google search result will be like your website /post /this instead of just /1. Although you could still use /1 to go to all of these posts. Okay, so that's going to do it for this video. In the next one, we're going to look at creating some comments. Now, based on what I created last time, I think I can actually do a little bit better. So I'm going to take a look at maybe making a bit more of an involved comment system and maybe tweaking some other things next time. But for now, thank you for watching. If this video helped you, remember to like it. If this video didn't help you, then dislike it, because we don't need to just like it to bump it up to the top search result because it's me. That's not how we want to do this. We want the good tutorials to make it to the top and the bad ones to go to the bottom. So if this is actually not helpful, then dislike it so that other people don't get exposed to this. But for now, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.